welcome back. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking around to be part of this student debate that we have before you. This is the 15th year for this public policy student debate with Dr. Frances P. Liddell. She is very passionate about it, and her passion is contagious. And so we have remained passionate about this debate, and it's always good every year. I think this year we have 3 student debate teams, and they are broken up into 4 students per team. So we have a total of 12 students. And for the first time this year, we will include a monetary award to commemorate our 15th year of this debate, in addition to the very immaculate trophy that Dr. Liddell has made every year. So thank you all for being here. Dr. Liddell, if you have any quick words to share before the students go into their debate rooms, or anything else you want to share.
No, just good luck to you. Do a great job. And I know you're going to come out really rolling. All right.
And I'm Timer Veronica. Dr. Liddell, for the audience, please, would you just give them the agenda of how this will run, if you could, and that will help me as well to do my timing duties.
Okay, we have a designated amount of time for each team, and those teams must not, in their delivery, must not exceed the time that is allotted. If they exceed the time, they will be disqualified. They are encouraged to use all of their time, but they do not have to use the entire time that has been allotted. And for the preparation opening, they will have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And Dr. Veronica Adams Cooper will show the green when you reach your minute. She will, that will let you know that you have 30 seconds when she shows the yellow. And at the end of that 30 seconds, the red will appear, and you'll know that that is your time is up. In the past, we had the program individuals to do that through the Zoom to let them know that the time was up, but we do have something that will help them in knowing when the time is up.
Okay, and thank you, Dr. Liddell.
So how much time do they have in the room right now to prepare the initial time?
The initial preparation time is 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so debaters, you'll have 4 minutes, and I'll share with you specifically. So each group kind of have someone who will keep time within your group. At 3 minutes, you'll have green showing. At 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you'll have yellow showing. And at 4 minutes will be when you come back to this breakout room. And so because I won't be in both of your rooms, those colors will show in the plenary room, but you'll need someone within your room to keep time as you go into your breakout rooms, if that's helpful for you.
Just a point of clarification. So for this first breakout room, they are not going to deliberate. They're only going to determine their team's name and then return, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, they're preparing for their opening. The first 4 minutes, they're preparing for their opening. And with that, they will also, identify what their name is.
Okay, so we need to flip the coin then, and then they'll need the topic.
Well, according to my listing here, it says the first thing that's going to happen, there's going to be an announcing of the debate statement and question, and that's going to be 1 minute. So is that correct, Dr. Liddell?
It is correct.
Okay, so you're going to provide that to them and then they're going to join their breakout room, or is there something different?
No, they will jump.
Okay, so I just, so are you giving them the question now? When they go in, what are they doing when they go into 4 minutes? I think that's the question.
That's what I'm
They have to decide, we need to flip the coin to determine who's gonna do opposition, who's gonna do affirmative.
So
And
we
then-
should do that before they go to the room.
Right, they should do that first. So if someone will flip a coin, one of their team members can flip the coin and determine which one they would prefer. The
So I
first
can flip
person,
the coin. Yeah,
okay,
I can flip. The team one wants to determine whether it's heads or tails.
the
I
first
remember
person
team
on the list, Reginald, second person on the list, Reginald, would you determine whether you want heads or tail, your group?
Dr. Liddell,
Yes,
is there any way we could know what the topic is beforehand? Because I think that would help us determine for our group whether we want opposition or the affirmative.
No, it doesn't work like that.
no, it doesn't work that
Okay.
way. Mm-mm.
That makes sense. Okay.
So we want to go ahead and flip the coin. You want to tell us what your group would like?
Heads or tails.
Like I'll make the executive decision for team one, heads.
Heads.
Hey. It is heads. So will
So-
they have the affirmative or the opposing, or they get to decide?
They flip a coin for the opposition or affirmative.
They've already done, they said heads.
Okay, heads, well, heads will be the affirmative.
Okay.
Our next group,
So team two will be the opposition.
right,
Okay,
So now
so
they're
they
ready
get,
for the
so
question.
now they're going in the breakout room.
I'm going to
Well, they
give them
ready
the
for the
question.
question.
I'm ready
Okay.
to give them the question.
Okay.
Okay. Both parties continue to grapple with handling of racial justice issues in the wake of the sustained demonstration and protests across the nation. But partisan differences in competing and examining the proposals have led to little or no action. What do you feel is needed to handle the awakening of racial justice? Should we address this, or is what is present fine? Again, both parties continue to grapple with handling of racial justice issues. Should they continue, or should something be done to change the trajectory that our country is headed? You now will return to your breakout room to discuss the issue.
And group three is
Dr.
supposed to,
Liddell. Oh, go ahead.
and group three is just gonna be waiting in the breakout rooms until you guys call us back to hear the arguments.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
okay.
Can you repeat the question, Dr. Liddell?
Yes, both parties continue to grapple with handling of racial justice issues. What should be done? Should it continue in the vein that it is, or should some definite changes be made?
Okay, and Chair Kalechi, I have 4, 3, and 3 for 10 the groups. Just want to make sure that before I start the clock, that all of them are in the groups. So that's 11. We have 11 participants. Is that correct?
No, we have
Showing
we have
11.
12.
We have 12.
Okay. Well, for team 1 and team 2, they have 4 each.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, so they have 4 in the rooms. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock.
Are they in their rooms already?
They're not in the room. Some of them are still in this room. So you need to join
How
the
do,
breakout room. Team 1 should be in breakout 1. Team
Okay, I
2,
thought I
breakout
saw
2. Yeah, team 3, breakout 3.
So we don't want team 3 to be able to hear what the other groups have said.
So we're able to put ourselves in our breakout room, because I don't see. Okay, I see it. I'm sorry, I do.
So team 3 should be in the breakout room right now?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll be given the affirmative or opposition stance once we commence, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So how do I make sure, let me see. Can scanners see if all the students are in? So I'll start the clock again.
Team
I'll
2
start it now.
has 4 people in there. Team 3 has 3 people. Team 1, okay, team 1 now has 4 people in there.
Okay. I'll begin, start. Thank you.
Dr. Amity?
Yes, I've been asked to engage between the time that they're in session. One of the things we wanted to do was revisit Van Jones' riveting presentation. So what we want to know, because I know a lot of folk had comments and the time ran out. What exactly did you feel about his perspective? I know our president was crystal clear, and to some extent I was in agreement with her that it was an oversimplification. If you look at, for example, the work of Maulana Karenga in Introduction to Black Studies, he talks about 9 bases of power. 9 bases of power. And of course, he puts at the top of the list voting in elections. One of the reasons why we're kind of in the shape we're in now is because elections have consequences. And I'm talking about, for example, the US Supreme Court. That so-called blue wall that Hillary Clinton lost, she lost in most of those states by less than 1 or 2%. So that meant that whatever propaganda Putin and the other misinformation group were putting out there, it worked, and it was designed to divide. But to summarily, I mean, he kind of said, "Yeah, you got to do that," and I agree with doing other things. But there are other things. For example, the number of appointed and elected officials. Appointed officials are just as important as elected officials. Also, wealth, which he touched on, but even in terms of development of small businesses. And then, of course, there's coalitions. I mean, we're the Conference of Minority Public Administrators. So there's more strength in coalitions with progressives and other folk. Then there's the most important thing, which is critical knowledge. You can't just take a young person that's a crackhead and just tell them, look, man, you have to be going to Silicon Valley and trying to, there has to be an enlightenment. There has to be an awareness. And of course, he talks about coercive capacity, which involves the ability of communities of colors to defend themselves although I'm nonviolent direct action subscribers. So I just want to hear from the folk that were in the session this morning. Anyone would like to start? Is that Heather?
Hello.
Hi.
How is everyone this evening? Yeah, that was beautiful. It made me think quite a bit, because I feel like I've been banging my head against the wall, and I was one of the protesters down in DC in 2020. Yeah, and I think Dr. Kalechi brought it up quite nicely, right? When she mentioned that, it is oversimplified because starting gate principles, we know that we do start off on different levels in different ways, right? Some of us begin with nothing. Others already have a leg up in society based upon their social class and stature there. But I was fascinated, by looking toward the future, right? But we cannot forget our past because you're not going to know what future to forge unless you know your past. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and of course, the Sankofa bird tells us it's about looking back so that you won't repeat the problems of the past. It seems as though the things that happen in the United States are cyclical in nature. They come back. 1865, 1965.
And point of order, excuse me for interrupting, but we are beyond the 4 minutes. If we are going to stay on schedule, if the groups can come back to the main room, if the message can be sent to them, we'll be off schedule if we continue down this path.
Well, Kalechi can just close them
Don't
off.
forget your thoughts. I've told everybody to come back in and I've closed the rooms, so they should be on their way in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now they'll need to go back to those same rooms. They'll still be open for them, right?
Yes, but I'm gonna make it to the timer that you're suggesting so that I don't have to keep telling them when to come in and out. I'll just make it for 3 minutes or 4 minutes, whatever you guys decide.
Okay. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
I
Or
believe
do
so.
do you want the file so you can build it in?
Nope, I don't. But I'm just gonna have it open and close at the 4 minute mark if 4 minutes is the mark you want.
Okay, well, I'll tell you to mark each time because they're different times.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it each time, which is totally fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
Great.
it'll be stated, so I can do it as it's stated.
okay, great, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I think everyone's back now.
The time for the opening presentation is 3 minutes. So for the affirmative team, it's 3 minutes.
And that, I think that's team 1.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, we think society is moving along perfectly as it is right now. The continual talk about the need to change things actually is what's creating the tension that we have currently in our society. We need to continue along, not seeing color, allow every individual just to exist. Talk of racial tension actually creates the tension that we have right now in our society. The need to try to teach our children that something is wrong or something stands out about them, regardless of their race, sex, or creed, is actually what's creating the problem that exists in our society right now. So it is our position that we leave things as they are, allow each child to go to school and not be reminded of things that happened years and centuries ago. We're doing just fine. Whatever area that you live in, your child is permitted to attend those schools. We're allowed to work where we want to work based on our education. And as far as things are working, that's perfectly fine in our society.
And I would like to add on that as a member of Team One. And if we're looking at employment statistics, specifically in like for instance, the STEM space and in transportation in particular, but the way things have progressed as is, and which should continue, has allowed for an increase in terms of race and gender in historically underrepresented STEM fields such as aviation. Right now, women comprise 20% of the aviation workforce, which is the highest it's ever been since aviation has been around in the US since the early 1900s. And when we're looking at race and gender with those statistics, we have roughly 3 to 10% of individuals who identify as Black or African American in places like pilots, flight attendants, and other vital positions that are critical to transportation and its infrastructure in the US currently. We all know that we've experienced similar delays and things like that over the past year with aviation. And we feel that if things change or the narrative is pushed that things need to change, that continuity will only be exacerbated. So we need to continue increasing the numbers and kind of creating this space and opportunity in spaces like STEM and aviation.
Okay, did you use?
Team 2.
Yes, I think we're ready, Veronica, for Team 2. Is that correct?
I was waiting for Team One to close it out, but I'll go ahead and start. So
Do we have more
just
time?
point of order. Your team will want to make sure you're closing it out properly, so the other team will know when to begin. So give me one moment to transition. You
I
have the
think there was
floor.
a question of
Two.
whether or not Team One had more time.
Well, they did, but the clock ran out because it was just going, so.
Okay.
Mhm. Do I need to do anything else with that, Dr. Liddell, to give them 10 more seconds to close it out? Yes. You're muted. I believe Dr. Liddell is saying to give Team One the 10 seconds to close out.
I was just going to say that critical race theory, it labels all white people as oppressors, and it makes all Black people appear to be victims. And they're kind of like painting everybody with the all white people with the same brush, and all Black people, viewed as victims. And we don't think our kids should be taught that.
Okay. And thank you, Team One. I'll restart. And for Team Two, the opponents, you'll have you have the floor. Team Two.
Good evening. My name is Ramya, and I am the primary spokesperson for Team Two, although obviously my team members are welcome to participate and speak on the issue as they wish. We are presenting the point of view that racial equity is a struggle that should not require accepting the status quo, but doing something different to change that status quo. If we consider the framework of the history of the racial justice movement, how it started from the beginning of slavery onwards, we will see that years have passed, decades have passed from the inception of these policies to the successive rebellions that have led to some sort of change, but that change is not reflective of a wider change. It is essentially the continuation of the same thing in different forms. For example, if we consider something like even policing, police began in the United States as a form of protection for property. And then property became human beings in the form of slavery. And now police as an institution are still in the United States. And they are still, as they did in the 1600s, as they did in the 1800s and the 1900s, they are still primarily policing Black and brown individuals compared to white people. And to deny that is a flagrant disrespect to the centuries of history that would say otherwise. And to even in the case of aviation, to say that 3 to 10% is a big success when previous numbers were looking more like 0% or more, that is a travesty, and we need to increase our expectations so that we can increase our results. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we will give the judges the time to rate the two teams. And
One
then,
moment, Dr. Liddell,
Mhm.
if I may, point of order.
okay,
We are now at item 4. It says preparation time for sound argument is 4 minutes. Is this when team 1 and team 2 go back to their breakout rooms to
Yes.
prepare for their sound argument?
yes,
Okay, so my assumption is that they can see their breakout rooms and to return to their breakout rooms. And once they're in, I'll begin the clock. They have 4 minutes, President Kelechi, to be put on the breakout room clock.
The rooms are now open for 4 minutes.
Thank you. Dr. Amity, the conversation
I'm
discussion
coming.
can pick
Y'all
back
have
up.
to call me.
All right.
I just
All
got
right.
unmuted.
Handoff.
All right. Okay. The second thing I wanted to
But
jump
was
out.
Heather talking? Somebody was talking. I said, don't forget your point. I don't remember who it was.
Mhm. Yeah, she didn't get a chance to finish. I don't think.
Oh,
It was Heather. Heather.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think so. The one thing, I don't want to sound negative because I totally agree with his points, and he was just so inspirational. I loved it. I loved it, hearing him. But I also, I agree that it's not something you made an important point a second ago about some people just don't have the capacity to learn tech. You can't send just anybody off to do this. Yeah. So, but and the other piece is you have to know your history to forge your future. I mean, I think that's critical. It's important. So,
My comment is follow the money. That's all I'm gonna say. You know what I'm saying?
good.
People think differently when they're getting paid, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, but at any rate, let me broach the second question. And I think there were a lot of good things with
Well, can I just add? May I add something, Dr. Amity?
Go right ahead.
I think that part was interesting. Thank you, Heather, for your comments. It was interesting for me because when I did a deep dive in his background, he was heavily influenced by many civil rights leaders. And one of the things that was pivotal to his social justice and social activism was the Rodney King beating in Los Angeles, where he formed various committees. And you look at all of the kinds of organizations that he formed, they started with this social justice kind of movement, understanding that there had been this inequality and lack of equal representation under the law. And so I was a little taken aback by that. Let's not spend so much time on our history. And I concur with Kelechi as well as Heather in suggesting that, and you, Dr. Amity, that we must build a solid foundation from that. I think our history is still being developed and written, but we have to start at some foundational point as a point of reference for the work that we're doing to make a change moving forward.
And can I say something?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Based on what you're saying, it reminds me of something that Al Sharpton said at the funeral of Tyree Nichols. I think that's, my mind is just tired. But he began to talk about this need. He said, it is an offense to Dr. King and his work for this young man to be beaten and killed, this way, by our own. And I think some of it, and this has been my thinking in the back of my head, is that it's easy for people to do that when they haven't paid the price, when they don't know the history, when they don't understand the sacrifice that was made. Because when you understand the sacrifice that's made, and many of us, some of us on this here were very active in the civil rights movement in the early 70s and all of that. Some of us came on the cusp of the 70s and we didn't experience as much, but we remember, and those things that helped us was for them to instill in us this Black pride, this sense of pride, this sense of understanding our race, this sense of teaching us about our history and our culture and our contributions, and that allowed us to stand tall, even when other people tried to demean us. And I think one of the things that we're having now, so when we move to this kind of like, well, isn't that enough? Don't we need to move forward?
They're back, Gloria.
Do we need to stay? Huh?
The teams are back.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
I'm
just said,
sorry.
can you put a pin in your comments? Yes.
Okay, I'm
Continue
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
you're good.
okay, I'm just gonna put a pin right there.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone. At this time, the sound argument presentation is for 3 minutes. The team 1 affirmative will have 3 minutes. And as you hand off to the next team, please make it clear. So I'll stop the clock. And then team 2 will begin. I'll reset the clock. You have the floor.
Okay, I'll start. There's basically 4 fallacies of the need to be woke. There seems to be a provisional cultural explanations, and basically we are who we are. Individuals need to be taken as face value. There's a fallacy that there's a dominant culture. There isn't a dominant culture. We all exist in this society. We all have a right to be who we are, and we are not held to different standards. It's sensationalized and it isn't true. There's a policy that there's selective agencies, but in reality, all of our society is created for all of our citizens, and individuals have to just take advantage of what's out there, and it's not limited. It's what you're willing to do, what you strive for. And last, the policy of differential outcomes. If white supremacy is truly as powerful as individuals indicate, then how is it that other racial groups seem to do a lot of things that score whites, and things like sports and things, physical things, and even in competing in some mind boggling things, is nothing that indicates that whites are any more supreme or other minorities are any less. It's just the opportunities that we have and we take advantage of. So our basic position is you are who you are by the choices that you make and what you choose to do in our society. And that's Team 1's position.
Team 2, I'll reset the clock for you, and I'll let you know when it's ready. One second.
When they get ready to end their presentation, if they would say, I return control back. That would let us know that they've ended.
I'm sorry, you said I returned the what? I'm sorry.
I now return control back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Team 2, you have the floor.
Thank you. So when I consider the framework of racial equity, I can really only I see what I see and I look at what I look at, and I don't think there's any benefit to looking at the sky and saying that it's purple or green when it's actually blue in the daylight. To put that differently, I see the effects of racial inequity in my own city, Durham, North Carolina. For starters, housing. The impact of gentrification, the impact of low-income individuals, mostly disproportionately Black and Brown people, moving out of their homes and white people moving in. White people of a higher socioeconomic status moving in after years of having lived there, after years of having lived in a particular area and grown up there and been in Durham for years and then moving out. And now the Durham of 20 years before is not the Durham that it is now. There are the shops that were local shops that were actually in an affordable price bracket have been priced out, and new shops have come in. And with that, a new population has come in. Who are those populations? Are they people who have lived here? No, they're people who have moved here because they've seen opportunity that has opened up specifically for them. Those are majority white people, majority socioeconomically advantaged people. And to the point of the model minority stereotype, wherein some racial groups are seen to perform better than others, that is in spite of the structural inequities that are present, not because of them. It is a way to keep people of color separated by the way that they are positioned in relation to whiteness, rather than a way to bring them together. And to see the impact of racial inequity, you need only to look at these statistics. If you look at education, for example, schools in minority neighborhoods are disproportionately more likely to receive less resources than schools in majority white neighborhoods. Rich, poor, you can say that is an effect, but in the end, that is it is interlinked. It is not separate. And my teammate Quintavious will speak on criminal justice.
No, we're running out of time. Our criminal justice system is biased. Its policing is unfair, and they have definitely unfair proceedings.
And to add to that, yes.
And to add to the timer is off. Are we done?
Thank you, Team 1 and Team 2. The next portion is shown on the program for you to now prepare for your rebuttal. This period is 3 minutes to prepare for your rebuttal. You will return back to the room and you will have 3 minutes to present your rebuttal. Their breakout rooms could be made available. It is 3 minutes for the rebuttal preparation. And then when they come back, 3 minutes for the presentation of the rebuttals.
Rooms are open for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Bill.
Okay, Dr. Bill.
Put a pin on something.
Okay, so I think when we take a very simplified view of we just need to kind of move on, that we forget that a lot of the things that we have accomplished are on the backs of people who paid some severe, I mean, they paid some real price for it in terms of loss of life, some of them long-term disabilities from, being beaten and all of that. So I think when we take these simplified views, it's easy for us to say that when we get to a place where we feel that we have arrived. But I think it's important for us to, I just can't imagine us not talking about history. And I'm very concerned if we buy into that whole notion that we need to move on. We're going to have a whole generation of individuals that don't appreciate anything that they have or the opportunities that they have. And I actually have a teenager, so I know that thinking. And sometimes it's hard to really even talk about civil rights because they see everything as this is the way it's always been with me. I can go and do. So I sometimes I find that kind of conversation of we need to move forward a little dangerous.
Anybody else?
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate if we don't teach our children about history. Because someone once said that if you don't pay attention, you will repeat history. And I believe George mentioned that earlier, but that is possible to happen. So we have to remember history, and we must give credit to those people who did stand up and stand back and press forward to bring us to where we are today.
I think since I'm beating up on Van, let me highlight what I thought was some of his most significant or salient points that I agree with. His whole thing about motivating young people to aspire for greatness. I like that. That was a clear message, and the understanding of where the power grid is. I thought that was insightful. I also, and this one becomes a little difficult in terms of finding commonalities with people you disagree with. I never forget this guy in social work had all this money. He said, "Doc, you can get this money." Then he told me it was from the Koch brothers. You know what I'm saying? And I said, "Nah, man, I don't want that Koch brothers money." You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, but I will say this, we have a group called VOTE, which is ex-lifers who form a group in New Orleans, and they've been activists and successful of doing revisions to the criminal justice system. They were in the forefront of the
Dr.
12
Amity,
jury thing. Go ahead.
I'm flashing the red
Okay.
light. Thank you. Team 1, 3 minutes. You have the floor. Please make sure your handoff is returning it back to the floor, what Dr. Liddell said earlier. Thank you.
I'm from Chicago. I grew up in the ghetto on the south side of Chicago. I seen buildings become abandoned, and in my neighborhood, and most of the landlords were Black, and they let the buildings go down. The building I was living in, we paid our rent, and the landlord, because back then they paid the water and everything else, and the gas and everything. He took the money. I don't know what he did with it. Everybody paid their rent, but the building became abandoned. We was basically living in an abandoned building. I had to go to the street corner to get water and everything, just so we can flush the toilet and everything. And then I went back home like 20 years ago. I went back home after like 20 years, and that building was like she was talking about, white people was all in the neighborhood because they tore down all the abandoned buildings. My thing is that those same Black people who owned all those buildings, when the land became available, they could have repurchased that land, and they could have became developers, and And so if Black people don't go in and become developers, then white people come in and buy up that land. And then that's why you see all the white people there. But if we had our own like businesses and became developers, we can go in and repurchase that land and develop our own communities. I'm finished. Back to, unless anybody else want to add.
All right, so I'm going to talk about criminal justice. I live in Athens, Ohio, in a very small community, and anytime I pass through the court or the sheriff's office, I normally see the white people actually going to court always. So I'm thinking that the biases that our opponents are talking about is just a creation. When you have this idea in mind that the justice system is biased towards the Black people, we will continue with that hatred. Because when you look at the reality on the ground, whatever bad thing people do, you have to be held responsible. It depends on where you're located in a part of the United States. There are some places that are very, very dangerous. Perhaps they are dominated by the Black people, so the crime rate must be a little bit higher there. So when a judge or the court pronounce a Black man to be, guilty of the law, it doesn't mean that they are biased. So I think it's just a creation, and when you go with bias, it will end up creating real hatred. That's what I think.
There was mention earlier about statistics of 3 to 10% being a travesty and things like that. But when you consider the fact that 12.5% of Black Americans account for the US population, and I will relinquish the rest of the time and send control back to team 2.
You're ready, team 2.
All right, thank you very much. So when I hear the previous arguments, 2 themes predominate. The first is the model minority. And for explaining the model minority, it is necessary to know how immigration works in this country. It's not easy to immigrate to the United States for most foreign workers. Most Asians are only in this country just because they did the H-1B visa. The H-1B visa requires that you have some special sort of skill to bring into the country, because if you don't, they won't let you in. That goes for not only Asians, but any other culture. They have to show some sort of special skill. They have to either have a trade or a skilled trade, or they have to be PhDs or MDs or have some sort of advanced degree. It's not an equal playing field. It's not. To say that because they could do it, everyone can do it is not necessarily reflective, because they wouldn't even be here. The United States wouldn't even let them in unless they showed that they were valuable in some way. This contributes to the wider idea that it's not what anyone brings, it's just what the dominant society values. Who is in the decision-making power? A majority of our white people. If you see sports, great people in sports, if you see the referees, a lot of them are white. I don't see, you can give me new statistics, but that doesn't change the fact that a lot of people are white, and that even people who are able to transcend that are just exceptions to the general trend. They are exceptions, and it's hard to claim equality of opportunity when people of color are exceptions rather than the standard. And that brings to the idea equality versus equity. Like, can you really say that a tall person and short person standing behind a wall, and the wall is really tall and the short person can't see over it because they're not tall, and the tall person is the only one who can see over it, but there is space between the wall and the sky? Can you really say that both of them can see over the wall? I don't think you can. I think you need to really differentiate what you mean by equality of opportunity. What you really need is equity of opportunity and not equality. So that is the sum and total of my rebuttal against team 1. Thank you. Unless my team wants to add anything.
Thank you, Team 1 and Team 2. This is where we are now. You will both prepare for your closing. You'll have 3 minutes to prepare for your closing. When you return, you will have 3 minutes to present your closing. And then the judges will have 4 minutes to do their tabulation and to submit their information to the counter. Let's see. We need our breakout rooms.
They are
And
now
President
open.
Kelechi, and they are now open for you. You will have 3 minutes.
So I was talking about how this organization Vote, which consisted of former lifers, were able to find common ground with Republicans in Louisiana on mass incarceration issues, and also the issue of the split jury was legislated by the Supreme Court, but they still were active in doing that. But the idea of reforms with mass incorporations was convincing because they found common ground with folk that were interested in budget kinds of concerns when we can't just keep spending money on imprisonment and the threat of a deficit, and state governments have to balance their budgets. So they were able to find common ground. So I think his point that finding commonalities with people that you don't agree with on some things is legitimate. And I do think that he sent a very inspiring message to youngsters that you can do what you want to do. Although he seemed to, I think mostly everyone disagreed with the fact that, he didn't want kind of have negative view on youngsters learning Black history. So that was the downside. I don't know if everybody's back. The second thing that I wanted to raise the question on was really the conversation this morning with Dr. Alan Rosenblum, particularly with respect to what's going on in Florida. And we heard a young man talk about Texas, particularly for those of us who are in academia, because we've been so comfortable to this notion of academic freedom. And now it seems as though the state legislatures in the South and elsewhere are now saying not only you do not have academic freedom, but if you say certain words, if you choose certain words, if you express certain opinions, then that, it's the idea that the state, you're contracted with the state, and that overrides anything you might say. I thought that was really disturbing in terms of, and I know there are legal challenges, so I don't know if anyone has any comments about that.
I just think that is something that we really do need to be concerned about. And we're going to see that's just the beginning. I believe that what we see in Florida and Texas is just the beginning. I think for a lot of particularly southern red states are going to move in that direction of more censoring of things. And so when a school teacher can't even choose what books they want to teach from, that's problematic. And so that gets back to not necessarily whitening history, the whitewashing history, but it certainly does give people a limited or this panacea view of how we got to where we are, even when we started talking about terms. I know, Veronica, I'm just going to close with this term of involuntary relocation as a term for slavery.
Flashing, yes. And I want it to be pinned so everybody can see the time. We're at 5:33. I'll reset the clock for our teams. Team 1, you'll have 3 minutes. Please make sure you're passing it off back to the floor so the team 2 can begin. You have the floor.
So to reiterate, we are the affirmative position stating that things should continue as is. And there are many reasons for that. The first being that if there were truly inequities or inequalities within the system, there would not be a Black man currently leading the United Airlines. And United Airlines has the highest percentage of Black people in the field. So that is a strong representation of, that's a strong mechanism for active and passive representation in the aviation space. And personally speaking, I think that the fact we have 3 to 10% of people in that space is better than 0. And considering how Black folks really have only been able to do what they wanted for maybe about 50 or 60 years, that's a significant margin. And that's something we need to continue to focus on because if there really were some inequity in the system, then we would not have a Black man leading one of the prominent airlines in the US, nor a lot of people in those spaces. In addition to that, primarily white-led carriers such as American would be donating $1.5 million to OAP, Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. So these inequities and inequalities that exist are constructed and detract from the actual good that's going on. And really, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now, these people are getting money to fly that wouldn't be able to otherwise, in addition to other areas in the STEM field. And with that, in terms of opportunity for underrepresented spaces, Angela's going to pick up and continue on.
The bottom line, 90% of US citizens graduate from high school, 88% of Blacks have high school diplomas, 41% of Blacks have bachelor's degree. And as it relates to opportunity in sports, 58% of the NFL is Black and 73% of the NBA is Black. So there's representation of minorities in the sports arena, contrary to what our opposing teams indicated. And as it relates to the police, it is a fact that more dense areas require more policing. If you have more people, then obviously you have more opportunity for crime to exist. And it's not that the police is harassing or being racial to minorities, it's just that minorities tend to live in areas that are more dense. Therefore, there's a requirement to make sure that there's patrol to keep the areas safe for all citizens. And in closing, I'd like to just say, in the current presidential administration, 44% of it is white, 55.6% is non-white, and 11% is others, and 33% is Black. And so it is our position that things should remain as they are. There's no need for change. And I will now yield the floor back to Team 2. Thank you.
Change is inevitable. Things definitely shouldn't stay the same. Our criminal justice system is flawed. Our policies, and they are definitely unfair. We have protests like George Floyd and Rashad Brooks. Criminal like our incarceration rates are 5 times higher. We need representation in higher positions. We need fair and balanced judiciary in our new public management. As things do change, we need to change with the way that the system is going. So if things stay the same, we will have the same people that are in power, or if things change, like we are looking for the change, we definitely need representation with having some people to make some skin folks or some people of color making some decisions in higher positions. And the rest of my partner will kind of piggyback off of that.
And before we adhere to the idea of percentages and numbers, we want data. We cling to data in order to what? Show how far we've come, show that we don't need to change anymore. Isn't that kind of contrary to the notion of why research is supposed to be done in the first place? Why are we doing this research? We have identified this trend of change being necessary, but we continue to use it in different forms. We continue to police in different forms. We continue to use carceral systems that create labor as a method of essentially not paying people to do their jobs, even if they are doing it in some of the hardest conditions known to man, called the prison system, that are, if you consider the demographics of prisoners and how prisoners got to be prisoners, it has been a long line of little upward mobility and also a significant amount of disparity. That is the reality of how systems are structured in the United States. It is just a repetition of the same thing. To say that change has happened is to basically say, oh, we're instead of, for example, instead of segregating you in policy, we will segregate you in practice and say that we are following the policy. So there's not really a way to clearly say what is inequality or what is inequity, because it is codified in law, but it is not followed in practice. And what is followed in practice is codified in law as the practice without really evaluating what are the consequences of the laws that we are implementing. What are the consequences of the laws that we are creating? They are iterative, they are repeated, they are consistent. And that is why, yes, change.
We now move into the scoring segment. Dr. Liddell, my assumption is that the debate team stay here and the judges stay here, but they do their tabulation and they send it on, or do the judges go to the judging room so they can have quiet while the discussion continues?
Yes,
I'll pass the lectern to you.
they should go to a room.
And Dr. Liddell, should the counter be in with the judges?
Yes.
Okay, so I need to be in the room too.
Thank you.
Where is the link for the judges? I don't see it.
Yeah, we don't have the breakout rooms on
Yes.
our screen.
Yes, how long should the that session be?
This is 4 minutes. This is
4
a 4-minute period.
Okay, thank you.
And be sure to include the counter too in the breakout room. And that's me.
Okay. The students didn't need to go into those breakouts, right? Because they went anyway.
No, they were, the only people that are supposed to be in the breakout rooms right now are the judges and the ballot counter. There's one person that has come on that indicated that he's here, and he would be the 4th person on team 3. And that is John, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Akoda.
John is already in team 1. He's
Okay.
already spoken earlier.
Okay, all right. I just saw where he sent a.
Okay, so are we supposed to be in the breakout rooms? Because I'm not there.
Yes, Dr. Billingsley. You want me to show
Okay,
you where
what-
it is? Or let me see if I can get you in there.
I'm slow. I don't see it. That's what
I'm not in there either. I was waiting.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I see it now. Thank you.
Anybody else? I think that's it.
Nicole, huh? Oh, she's gone. Is that everybody?
Nicole, Gloria.
George, is George supposed to be in there?
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
Okay,
But-
so we were talking about the comments made, and I was explaining that the 2 points that I thought were positive was his inspiration for young people about reaching the sky, and also the need to find commonality. And I gave the example of the activities of ex-offenders, at least like a lot of them are lifers. And they're actively involved, and they've gotten a lot of money. I don't know where their money come from, whether it's the Koch brothers or whether it's, but they've got a lot of money to go forward with what they're doing. So, I mean, taking money is not bad as long as the agenda that you have is a common ground with the people who you disagree with, and they're not forcing you to adopt, things that they believe. But, I guess I'm naive. I was taught that he who pays the piper gets to call the tune. So I don't know how that really works, but these brothers have been really dynamic. So I've seen it work in terms of prison reform in Louisiana. Any other comments on that? And I think also we were talking about the piece with Rosenblum. Maybe I shifted gears. The academic freedom. In terms of that, you'll hear me say this all the time. Elections have consequences.
yes,
So once Anthony Scalia was not replaced, and of course, after Trump got elected, now we have the stack of judges that we have. And of course, Alvin Chambers used to always tell me that the law is what the Supreme Court say it is. And I'll stop there.
Dr. Liddell and the timekeeper, could we just be granted just 30 or 20 more seconds? I was getting the tabulations.
okay,
If we can go back to the breakout room, just give us 30 seconds or either.
Yes, 30
Okay,
seconds.
okay.
Any comments? Go ahead, I'm
George,
sorry.
I know you're a big Christian fella.
Yes.
Blessed is he that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. And when you think of some of the things that have been done, they have not been done by people that believe that everyone should be treated fairly. I would say there's a difference between being treated fair and being treated equal. Being treated fair, if you need a house, you're not going to buy a house for everyone. You're going to buy the house for the person that needs it. So that's fairness. Whereas the other one might need tuition money. That's the way it should be.
Could I make a comment?
Sure.
Yes.
I like what you said, George. I have to call you George instead of Dr. Amity. What you said that the Supreme Court says what the law is or what the law means. But just because the Supreme Court says that's the law doesn't mean it is morally right and morally wrong.
Right.
So I'm not going to speak Christian, but it's the law, and then it's our standards, and we get our standards based off of where we get it from. I get mine from the Bible, but other people get theirs from wherever. But I also like what the person just said a second ago, because it's a difference between equal. I actually wrote that down. I'm gonna steal your words. Between equal and what's fair, because what fair is that I believe that African Americans should receive more because what was done to us in the past. But, in Texas, what the guy was saying earlier this morning about Texas, but I think that was in a session, he was saying that Texas just passed a law saying that you can't do a quorum anymore by, I forgot what exactly he said. Judge Abbott changed a law where you're not gonna hire based on race to make sure it's an even amount of racial, the race in the organization. I mean, that's not fair. Yes, it's equal, but it's not fair. So I like exactly what you said and how you said it, and I'm actually gonna take your words. But so the point of me saying all this is that what the courts say and what's morally fair and morally right is two different things. Because a court in Afghanistan versus a court in China versus the court in America are all
Is
three
everybody
different
back,
viewpoints.
Veronica?
Oh,
Hello?
I'm just flashing that, time is expired, so I'll defer to Dr. Liddell.
If we could send a message, I know that you're flashing
She
your
said
light.
30
but
seconds.
30 seconds, I know it's been longer. They,
We're here. I'm here.
We're here and
We're
we're
ready.
ready.
They're
Okay.
ready.
We've
Okay.
been
Alright.
ready. And I could give the score, okay, the score from the judges team one was 85 for one judge.
One moment. Dr. Liddell, if I'm understanding, did you want the counter to give that information, or are you going to present it?
She can give it to, she can present it to me and I will do it.
Okay,
You need,
okay, so-
you need to combine the scores, not each person.
Okay, okay.
So tabulator Caroline, did you need more time? Or
Just
you
give me
have the
one more
total?
minute because that wasn't explained. 1 minute and I'll calculate them all and I'll forward them to Dr. Liddell.
Okay, thank you.
Send them in a chat, please.
Private chat.
Right.
I'll start the clock again for 1 minute. Okay. Dr. Diggs, the floor is open.
Are they
Give me
back?
one-
Or?
We have half a minute.
Okay.
I came in on the end of the discussion, so I didn't get all of it, but every time somebody talking like similar to, when I was hearing you say, I always think about like when I was in, because my undergrad was political science. I remember my teachers used to always say, it's whatever the Supreme Court say it is.
That's right. There you go. You know? So
And
which
just
means
in-
that the Supreme Court we have had to do with the fact that elections have consequences.
That's right.
And that was critical because Merrick Garland would be on the court. And then if Hillary had won, we'd have another Supreme Court justice. So,
Just don't bring that up around my wife, because every time you bring it up, she's gonna talk about how Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have retired and let Obama pick, and she should have retired, and she should have retired.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure at that time, because once again, remember, Obama couldn't have picked when Anthony Scalia died.
Right. Mitch McConnell would have found the way to.
Yeah, there you go. So you have to
Delay that
control
one too.
both houses. Elections have consequences. Not the cure all.
Tabulator Caroline.
I've just sent it to Dr. Liddell.
Okay, thank you so much. So Dr. Liddell, you have the floor.
Okay, let's give both teams a round of applause. Team one, the score is 257. Team two is 363. Team two is the winner.
They move
Team
on to
two.
the second round. Huh?
They move on to the second round with team three. We want to tell both teams they did an excellent job, very good. But someone had to be the winner.
Thank you, Dr. Liddell. You said that someone had joined for team three. I don't know.
I think someone corrected me and said he had already joined team 3. This is John sent me a text message saying that he was here. Cody.
Yeah, he's in team 1. We can
Okay.
continue.
Okay, so everything is okay. Now, everyone, we are at 5:54. And so we will have to really stay within time to finish at 6:30. My class starts at 6 o'clock. So if I seem a little distracted, it's because I will be distracted. But give me some grace. At this time, Dr. Liddell, will you present the question for this round for
Yes.
team 2 and team 3?
Yes.
Do you have to flip first?
Yes, we have to determine whether the which one is going to be affirmative and which is going to be negative.
So will we defer to team 2, since they were the winners? Would you like to declare heads or tails?
We will go with heads.
Okay. Heads it is. So you will accept the affirmative. Team 3, you will be the opposition.
If Russia is supported by China with military weapons and materials, should the United States place sanctions on China? If Russia receives weapons and military support from China to fight Ukraine, should the United States place sanctions on China?
Breakout rooms are now open.
And that's a 4-minute period. I will start the clock.
Okay.
Which team had the affirmative? I missed that.
Team 2.
Okay.
Team 2.
Okay, I guess while we're waiting, the other interesting presentation was Delegate Melissa Wells, that was her name?
Yes,
From
sir.
Maryland. I had to figure out what a delegate was. I thought she was part of the Democratic National Convention, but I understand, it's not representative, it's delegate. So I understood
Yeah.
that. And a question was raised. I have a saying that there's the United States, and then there's the South, and then there's the Deep South, and then there's Louisiana, Mississippi, and forgive me for saying this, Dr. Liddell, and then there's Mississippi.
George, I was born and grew up in Louisiana, and you know it. But I love Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, at one time, I kind of felt, because, when I lived there, I said, man, Mississippi is lightheads ahead of me. They're making real good progress. The Black folks stick together. They don't sell them out. And then, of course, these last 2 events with the Jackson water system and then superimposing the criminal justice system, all white criminal justice system on the city of Jackson.
Yes.
And I raised that question because I've been pondering the theme for the next conference that I want to throw out, and I came up with a theme: rethinking public administration, and it had to do with what I would say, self-determined, participatory, and sustainable local communities. Because local communities are where the rubber meets the road, And it seems as though that the fights that the state of Maryland are having are very different from the fights that we have in Louisiana and Mississippi. And so, my thinking is, because ultimately, whatever in Florida, and we can throw Texas in there as well. What do we do about this? What are some of the strategies that should be employed to push back on this? Legally, the courts, I mean, you would think First Amendment free speech is a no-brainer.
Dr.
But,
George, Aberdeen. I see it's on green. But look, Marjorie Taylor Greene, now she lives in Georgia. That's all I gotta say now. I know we got our share of problems. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is in Georgia.
Well,
You did not have to bring us into this conversation, but you're right.
Yeah, but she's in Georgia, but Georgia was able to put Raphael Warnock in the Senate. She's there, but Louisiana and Mississippi are a little different. Now, the positive about Louisiana and Mississippi, 1/3 of our population is African American. And I suspect if you count other people of color, it might be 50%, it might be 40%. And no one can convince me, having traveled through Mississippi, that
I
the
must
state of
stop.
the
We are at 6 o'clock and we are at the red.
Okay.
Are both groups present? Okay, the group that was indicated as being first, was it the affirmative? Whichever group knows who needs to go first, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, one moment, because I want to be able to set the clock for you. Okay, so your opening is 3 minutes. I'm setting the clock for 3 minutes. Each team will have 3 minutes. Each team, especially the first team, please make sure you pass it off by saying, I'm returning control. And then the next team knows that they'll go. You have the floor.
So since 1949, the US has had a satisfactory relationship with China, though one not without its sanctions, its additional sanctions that have been instituted throughout history. But when we consider whether sanctions should be applied against China in this case, it is important to evaluate whether it'll be effective, as you do with most foreign policy. But it is important to understand that the effectiveness of sanctions it works best when there is strong internal political opposition to the target government, and especially when international commercial interests are involved. This is the case with China, given that, not only have they had protests in China considering Hong Kong, but also the genocide of the Uyghur people, and also considering that China is responsible for a lot of the United States exports. Having that sort of relationship get cut is a way to not only reduce United States dependence on China, but also to probably give a wake-up call to the Chinese people as well as the Chinese government, because it is really only the Chinese people who can go against their government, revolt against their government in order to produce the appropriate consequences for those sanctions being applied by the United States. So in essence, if the US does sanctions against China, then the people are freed to more freely criticize their government because they are being directly impacted. The Chinese government cannot use state-sponsored media to contradict what the people already know, even if they can do that to external parties. So sanctions against China in the case of supporting Russia with weapons to fight Ukraine are going to be very useful going forward, because it is a way to prompt protest within China. Thank you.
We'll yield the rest of our time to the other team.
Okay, other team, one moment as I reset for you. Give me 1 second. Okay, team 3, you will now have 3 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you for that. My team and I oppose sanctions against China in the war with Ukraine. And we form the basis of that on not only are we already in a recession, but if we do choose to oppose or place sanctions upon another country, we are ultimately sending a message that, you know, even though we are in dire straits, we have no qualms about putting others in dire straits. And I think with the recent few years of social upheaval with the pandemic and with political upheavals, we have to be very cautious about the political and social messages we're sending out. And additionally, Russia is already experiencing economic upheaval. We all know the ruble is worth very little these days, and that's not going to change anytime soon, even with the assistance from China. As one of my team members mentioned earlier, the session with the new billionaires taking over, we also have to be cautious about other economic players who would benefit from more wartime novelty. And you have to remember, all of this is to cause social upheaval and it's to cause chaos. The more chaos we cause with war, with economics, the more it affects people at home. We ultimately have to be the voice to the voiceless. So, in sending war, it's also going to involve other countries. It's going to create a domino effect, and it will impact food sources, physical needs, goods, services, imports, exports. We have to be very cautious about everything through sanctions. And we have to kind of pull apart what the meaning of sanctions are. And it's more than just a political message, it's a social message. And not only that, we are unclear really of China's position. You know, we hear a lot about satellites and balloons, but we don't know for sure. So we're ultimately letting people set narratives for us. So we have to be cautious on why and where it's coming from, you know, and we still haven't gotten the answers from the 2016 election, what all was involved there. So, you know, placing sanctions on China, I think would send a very dangerous message. My team members, if you all would have an opportunity to add to that, you're more than welcome.
Yes, I would like to add. Thank you, Melissa. Like Melissa was stating, I wanted to bring up the point, or our team wants to bring up the point that the supply chain will be disrupted if we try to put sanctions on China. Thank you. I will release the time back over to the timer. Have control.
Okay, thank you. We're now moving to, give me 1 second, the next portion. And the next portion is for both teams to be able to, now that you have presented your opening, you will prepare for your sound argument. Each team will prepare for your sound argument. We have 4 minutes on that clock. When you come back, you will have 3 minutes. Okay, so breakout rooms scheduled for 4 minutes.
Breakout rooms are now open.
Okay. Ms. Hubbard, text me if y'all can hear me now. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Ms. Hubbard, text me if y'all could hear me now.
Dr. Adams Cooper, you're not talking to COMPA, right? You're talking to your class.
Correct.
Okay, just want to be sure.
Okay. So, we were talking about, what's going on in the South, and anyone has any comments about that? So what? How do we counteract this? Well, no one else has anything. Let me go back to my original premise. Elections have consequences.
They do.
And unfortunately, when President Biden controlled both houses of Congress, that was the time to, in my opinion, expand the court. Now, I know there was the West Virginia senator and the Arizona, but that's going to have to be the goal. And of course, the 2024 elections are going to be crucial, and the Democrats seem to have more seats up than the Republicans. So, in looking towards 2024, will the message of DeSantis and Governor Abbott and Margaret Taylor Greene and the mega Republicans, which showed to be a flawed message in the midterm elections, how will they play in 2024? Any comments? Or is everybody defeated?
I don't know. I just think that right now people are just suffering from PTSD from from COVID and all of the stuff. And so, I'm not sure that when people get to the poll, if they're gonna, how when you just get beat down and you just overwhelmed, you just get to what I'm concerned is that people get to the point that they really don't care. That they'll be like, okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way we vote. I'm going to vote, but it doesn't matter. And so that's my concern about what we're seeing is that people, by the time we get to that, they'll be desensitized. They will have forgotten all of the stuff that has been said and done. And they'll just like, okay, this is my civic duty. I'm going to go and vote. And that's it.
So and I talked about the percentages in Mississippi of people of color and the percentages in Louisiana, but then you got other states like Georgia, which has a smaller percentage of African Americans and was able to pull that trick. The way what we have to understand is there's some work on the ground that has to be done. Mm-hmm. And that turnout is what you make it. Mm-hmm. Getting people out to the polls to deal with this threat that we're having is essential. And I know that's easier said than done, but it takes money and it takes people working. So I'm not one to reside that the turnout is already fixed.
No, I don't. I think that we still have to work. But I do think that people are getting burnt out with a lot of the stuff that's going on. And so we do have work on the ground.
Gotcha.
That we have to do.
Well,
are both teams returned? Point of order. Have both teams returned to the floor?
Yes.
Okay. And everyone is in position? Okay. So the first team presenting, you will have 3 minutes to present. I will reset the clock. One moment. And you have the floor. Please make sure that you clearly tell us that you're finished at the end. So we'll restart the clock for team 2. You have the floor.
And the team has to say that the team is finished. Right?
Good morning.
Okay, let me start. So yes, the team presenting must then say they are returning control. So I know to reset for the next team. Thank you, Dr. Amity, for clarification. Okay. Team
Good
2, you have the floor.
Good evening. Thank you for having us again. And for our first argument, it is necessary to introduce how the US-China relationship really developed. So in World War II, when Russia allied with Japan, US allied with China in order to provide military backup against Japan and Russia, who were basically on the side of the Axis forces in World War II. So in this sense, US has already held up their end of the bargain in terms of helping China out with providing economic and military aid. But in the current environment, if China is then allying with Russia, who was the US's enemy for not only World War II, but also in the broader scheme of foreign policy and foreign interactions, then that is a shift, a perceptible shift in the relationship that they are having, and thus necessitates sanctions being applied. But in perhaps like if it affects people, maybe that's a sign that the government isn't actually serving the people. In which case, isn't the US being a voice for the voiceless anyway? In the sense that if they are applying sanctions against the government, they are saying this government is doing something wrong. They are supporting a war that is unilaterally put against a country that it cannot fight for themselves, and moreover, is fighting already against its own people. So isn't that fighting for the voiceless? Because that is basically giving the Chinese people an opportunity to really strike back against their government, being able to point to the sanctions saying, you're not serving us economically, we are going to revolt. This is it is a complex web of being able to take advantage of the relationships and the situations that the people and of both Ukraine and China are thrust into, which are both difficult situations, as well as the situation in Russia. But to do sanctions against China kind of speaks for everyone who is voiceless, because China is supporting a regime that is just as bad as the one they are proposing and the one they are spreading to their own people. So in that sense, it is a voice for the voiceless, and it also is a continuation of what has already been happening for many years, and rather it is a reaction to what has changed after what has happened for so many years. So that is our argument. And
Time. Okay, we'll now transition to team 3. I'll reset the clock. Team 3, you have the floor.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. So I first want us to think about who is China? China is a superpower throughout the world. They are on different continents around the world. So I want us to think about China and the US, okay? So first, most of our companies here in the US are going over to China because it's cheap labor. So again, we need China. Infrastructure. If we look at infrastructure here in the United States, we can't even get an infrastructure bill passed. The infrastructure over in China is way better than ours. If we look at even the train system, they have a speed train system that we can't even get over in US. Military, we cannot compete with China, but we want to control what they're doing with someone else. How does that work? Come on now. They're a tech leader. We're still trying to break it in the tech world. Education. I mean, come on. The United States, as we know right now, is not one of the top leaders in education, but China is. Elections. We still trying to figure out what happened with our elections because of what happened with Russia. TikTok. TikTok is one of the most popular social medias here in the United States. You know who controls that? China. But we also got to think about all the things that we get from China over here in the United States. If we put sanctions on these people, then we're going to be cut off from so many different things. Our children will not have the toys that they necessarily need because all of our toys is made over there. All our shoes is made over there. All of our, pretty much everything, all of our technology. We literally got our iPhones made in China, people. So I think that we need to think about this. So Russia right now is in shambles right now. And they're trying to do this war with Ukraine. That's a problem in itself right now. Because again, you're trying to take over this small country and you're already in shambles in yourself. And we're trying to put sanction on the people that have a power, even over the United States. So again, how does that work? Make sure I got all my notes here. Also, one of the biggest things that we also need to think about here too as well, we owe China money. So we're gonna put sanctions on a country that we owe money to. So I just want us to think about that for a second. And I release my time.
How much time does the team have?
Okay, you are at 2:47.
How much time does team 1 have left? I mean, team 2 have left?
You're at 2:54 now. 2:55, 6, 7, 8.
But we had 3 minutes
Time.
total. So.
Time. Okay, we're at time. Okay, so the next portion is you will now prepare for your rebuttals. Each team will have 3 minutes to prepare their rebuttal. So the breakout rooms need to be set for 3 minutes. When you return, you will have 3 minutes to present your rebuttals. So we are on 3-3. I'll reset my clock.
Okay, breakout rooms are open.
Okay. And I will now start my clock.
Dr. Amity, if I can respond to the previous comment and conversation, particularly from the standpoint of the state of Georgia, I'm not quite sure that we should highlight us as a beaming example. Yes, we were able to get Raphael Warnock reelected, but we failed at getting Stacey Abrams elected. And so I'm unclear about what message that is communicating. And we also reelected Marjorie Taylor Greene. But if you look beyond Atlanta and the perimeter, like most southern states, and you look at the thin margin between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker in those Republican-controlled cities and counties, it is still an indictment when you think about the number of people of color who live in those respective counties. I also think it is telling when we think about the fact that our governor is passing laws. He's lifted the restrictions on guns, so anyone in our state can have a gun without a permit. And equally, our crime is escalating across the state. Secondly, we're talking about a governor who supported Donald Trump, and where there were issues in our state, and the district attorney in the city of Atlanta is still trying to determine if they're going to bring charges against Donald Trump for his comments to our Secretary of State post the election, which again is telling because we are years out from that. And would we have the same response if that would have been President Obama making a call to the Secretary of State and telling him that he needs to increase his numbers? So there is something that is happening here And for me, for Herschel Walker, who had, in my opinion, was not a viable candidate at all to receive the kind of response he did in our state and across our state, still says to me that there is more things that need to be done in the state of Georgia.
And I piggyback, I think you make an excellent point, because, you know, we can say Mississippi and Louisiana, but look at Jim Jordan, who's from Ohio. You know, you got Jim Jordan's from Ohio, and then what is it? The guy from Wisconsin, the senator from Wisconsin. It's not only just Mississippi, and it's not only just the South. It has spilled over to other areas as well, which we can say it always exists, but it's prevalent. We can't just say Mississippi and Louisiana, and we can't just say the South. Thank you, and I think you're an excellent timekeeper. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
I said,
Thank
I
you
said
so
the
much.
South, then
Okay.
the
Thank
deep South.
you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. The teams are back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So team 2, as you present your presentation, you'll have 3 minutes. Again, please let us know by saying you return control when your team is finished. You have the floor.
American policymakers should not allow any social issues to like derail, dominate, or harness our relationship with China. We have the OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control Systems, that put policies and things in place against like our foreign counterparts for things just like that. We need our private outsourcing while we have sanctions on China, like we're for that. And the US has pursued commercial or plenty opportunities and profits from China, like technology, investments, security, all of our established manufactured drugs. And we have these policies and procedures in place to kind of stop that so it won't derail the human rights in these other countries that we have our sanctions on.
And further, when we consider the need for products such as toys, iPhones, TikTok, even Zoom, we don't really consider them needs as much, but it can be considered a need, or it can be considered a dependence. We have been trying to go for American-made products for years. Why is that? Because of the voiceless in China. It is because of the human rights concerns. People who work in China are being forced to work under dangerous and life-threatening conditions for little to no pay. It is basically forced labor. And every time you buy an iPhone or fund TikTok, if that is why we are avoiding applying sanctions, are we really defending the voiceless? Are we really saying that we stand against the human rights abuses China is doing? If we don't stand against them in this way, we should not be rewarding them economically for something that is humanly wrong. And to say otherwise kind of defeats the whole point of why we apply sanctions in the first place. That it is a multi-factor solution to numerous problems. And yeah, it's a game. It's a game. It's a game where foreign powers are joining with each other and trying to unseat the other. But that game has multiple uses. It is not just a one vision, one mission sort of game. It is a game for winning on all levels. And the only way to win is to not play at all. And not playing at all is applying sanctions.
Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Liddell or colleagues, my 6 o'clock start this morning has fallen upon me. And I need to know where we are. I need to know
Okay.
where we are.
Okay, I think, did they give their final?
I know we're in the rebuttal. Did both teams rebut?
No.
No.
Okay, so we're in the second team to rebut. Okay, thank you. I just needed that. Okay. It's called, I need a Snickers break. Okay, team 3, you now have 3 minutes to present your rebuttal. You have the floor.
Thank you. Setting sanctions on China sets a dangerous precedent for the American population. The American people, the American government, historically and presently, have never been a country to speak for the voiceless or be a voice for the voiceless unless it directly impacts or benefits the American people. And we have historically and presently, we have not seen the American people come out and place sanctions for and stand and provide arms for countries who cannot defend themselves. There are several conflicts. There, the conflict and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has pulled on us morally. It's tugged, it's morally corrupt, and it's tugged on the heartstrings of many of the American people. But we did not see that same sentiment and that same interest historically when superpowers and other countries have invaded several countries within Africa, the Congo, the Sudan. We did not see those same arms and support provided to those people who were voiceless at the time. And so we need to always maintain a sense of logic in this space. Yes, if we need to maintain a sense of equilibrium across the board, it would be unfair to provide those sanctions and come to the aid of those in Ukraine when historically we have not done that for other countries experiencing similar invasions, nor have we provided those voiceless individuals in those countries with arms. So we are in opposition to sanctions on China and supplying them with arms unless we are going to be establishing those same arms in other countries, particularly on the African continent, who have had the same who had the same level of invasion from superpowers and unable to fight for and speak for themselves. And I yield the time to you, Tony.
Yes, I like to segue off of that, what Ellen was talking about on the military perspective. China's military is one of the largest, most powerful militaries in the world. United States military is not as large, but it is advanced. We do not need to move into a conflict with China. The world is not prepared for that. We will be in a situation that will cause global harm. So no sanctions on China. Russia is not truly a factor in far as our relationship with China. Our relationship with China is on the edge right now. However, they need us and we need them. They're doing things that we don't like and we're doing things that they don't like. However, to maintain world peace, we need not push sanctions on China. And I relieve my time to the timer.
Timer, thank you. Okay, so I put in the chat that we were at 6:30. We're close to finishing, everyone. We are now at the stage where both teams will prepare for their closing remarks. 3 minutes for the breakout rooms. 3 minutes for the breakout rooms. When you return, you'll have 3 minutes to present your closing argument. Okay.
Breakout rooms are open.
I'm sorry?
Breakout rooms are open.
Are the other team going into breakout room too? It's supposed to be, both teams supposed to be in breakout room.
Both teams 2 and 3
Team
have to
2 and
prepare for
3.
their closing argument.
Okay.
So they should join whatever group breakout room they need to go to.
So what about Joan Akano?
No, everybody that's in a breakout room is where they're supposed to be.
I got you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and begin the clock. 3 minutes.
So Christy, what's your analysis about what happened to Stacey Abrams? You think it was a gender thing? Dr. Roberts?
I can
Liz?
say straight up it was a gender thing. It's so
Yes.
sad and it's so unfortunate.
Yes, it was
She should be the governor of Georgia.
Georgia.
Ridiculous.
Well, she should have been the governor of Georgia the first time that
Yes,
she
of
ran.
course.
Right.
That's the first time. I think it was a gender issue. But I also think it is, there were questions about her sexuality. The former governor's wife made a statement saying that they hoped that a family would live in the governor's mansion, which again talked about her decision to be single. And I think to Gloria's point, some voters were apathetic in Georgia because remember, after you all voted for the president, our ads did not discontinue because we still had the runoff election between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock that persisted. And so I think voters were a little apathetic. I also partially believe that the goal for Stacey was not to become the governor. I think she used her and leveraged her power and resources to ensure that Raphael Warnock could win his position and having herself on the ticket. I'm not saying that she didn't want to win, but I think at some point it was about leveraging her power and resources to ensure that we were able to have an African-American senator that was representing the state of Georgia. And so having herself on the ticket also meant that people would come out to vote. I'm unclear about what was happening in the southern states where you have, the southern counties where you had heavy and large African-American population. So typically it's Atlanta, Fulton County, is Savannah, is, I think, Veronica, am I right, Albany, and maybe Columbus, where you have those Democratic counties, but everything else in Georgia is largely Republican, although you have a heavy African-American base and people did not come out and support her in the way that I believe they should have. Sorry, I'm yielding my time back to the timer.
Thank you. Both teams are back. So now we will begin the closing segment. We'll restart the clock. We have 3 minutes for team 2. Team 2, you now have the floor. I'll begin.
So when we consider China's current economy, which is often identified as a place sanctions would affect the most, it is important to understand where China's economy is in the first place to understand the impact sanctions would have. So the World Bank defines a high-income nation as one with a gross national income per capita of above $13,205. And China logged in at 12,608 last year. So that was reported by the National Bureau of Statistics. So I think it's important to understand that sanctions as a whole are not necessarily going to demolish that as easily as you might think, to plunge the people into poverty. What it, however, will do is to promote a strong message that we aren't going to just allow China to continue steamrolling individuals that the US has allied with. US is going to stand by its own allies and maintain the relationships it has worked so hard to sustain. And that in itself is a form of protecting the voiceless, because governments make allies. Governments don't ally with the people. This isn't necessarily about morality as much as you might think. It is the framework of how we play the foreign policy game, of which human concerns do play a part, but it is the foreign policy game that enables those human concerns to take center stage. For example, it is an incorrect statement that the US doesn't impose sanctions against countries that have experienced genocides, and even the African countries that have been mentioned as not having had sanctions against them. That's incorrect. They have. 9 countries have had US sanctions against them, and contrary to popular belief, it's not Asia that has the most sanctions, it's Africa. And that is an important point of how we need a multi-factor way to stop genocides, stop people taking advantage of ongoing relationships, and that is sanctions. Sanctions are how we do it. And that is the conclusion of Team 2, unless my team members want to say anything more.
Yes, and I think we should always be for sanctions. With sanctions, it will help benefit the world, expanding and allowing the flow of great ideas with China, the growth, political change, the future of China, like the China is the great unknown to us, and these sanctions will help encourage a better 21st century for the United States. And your time.
Thank you, Group 2. We will now reset the clock for Group 3. Group 3, the clock is reset.
Thank
You
you.
have the floor.
Thank you for that. I think my colleague on the opposing side made a good point about the World Bank, but I think we also need to think about the World Bank of Social Affairs. Essentially, when we put economy before human lives and before the future of our future generations, who will be future leaders, we need to take into account that by adhering to economic principles, we are essentially buying into a capitalistic and imperialistic ideology. Now, what does that do for our future generations? Do they carry on that violent rhetoric? Do they think violence will be the answer? And it's not. And as the saying is, an eye for an eye makes us all blind. And I think that's what's happened here in the issue with Ukraine. And we all know as peoples of color, you know, the U.S. won't even sanction itself for the crimes it's done against people here. You know, they've attempted genocide on the indigenous peoples here, indigenous peoples all over the world. And they should be held accountable, you know, before they hold anyone else accountable. So if we keep on with that capitalistic, imperialistic attitude, then we're sending a clear message that violence, at the end of the day, U.S. only knows violence, and that's what it uses to solve its problems, when it should be diplomacy, communications, bureaucracy, systems that have been proven to work. So at the end of the day, it is a moral issue, because if we try to oppress others the way they've oppressed people here, then there will be no one left. There will be no one left to be future leaders. And I think we need to set a good example and end that imperialistic attitude and begin new with something new. I'll hand it over to my teammate.
So we talked about a lot of things socially that the United States get from China. Of course, TikTok, of course, Zoom, like my colleague said earlier today. But we also have to think about what else that we get from China too as well that we need. Think about medical supplies. We think about research labs, the PPP that we actually needed when we had COVID-19. But you also got to think about what COVID-19 came from. But also manufacturing, science. It's so many things that we're getting from China that we necessarily need here in the US. Yes, socially, but also what about medically, all the things that we necessarily need as well. So how are we going to try to take power away from somebody that has more power than we have? So I say no to sanctions, and it's no possible way that we can even make it happen.
In addition to what my colleague is saying, the opposing team mentioned that
Time. Okay. We are now at the stage. Well, I want to say congratulations to all 3 teams. now we move to the judge's tabulation for, and Dr. Liddell, I'm going to defer to you on this. I'm going to defer to you on what needs to happen. They're tabulating for this round, and then you would instruct the tabulator, Miss Caroline, with what she needs to do. Yes, I yield.
Okay, at this time, we'll wait until she completes her tabulation for this last team, team 3 and team 2.
The judges need to go in the breakout room.
We need to go in the
Right.
breakout room first.
Yeah.
4 minutes. Thank y'all. Okay,
I'm waiting to hear the time for the breakout room.
4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, what really a very interesting conversation about Georgia. I guess, you know, I was so proud of the moment Warnock won, disappointed when Stacey also lost. But, you know, we pulled the same trick in, even though it wasn't a Black elected official, with Governor John Bell Edwards.
Oh, yes.
Because if we had not done that, who knows whether Suno would still be alive. Unfortunately, there haven't been any serious Black or Democratic candidates that have put up. I mean, it's almost as though now it reminds me of what you were saying about Georgia. You pulled the trick with Warnock, but it seemed though folk were exhausted when it came to Stacey Head. I mean, it's not Stacey Head, Stacey Abrams. I'm sorry. I always like to go into the numbers, so I think that's what I'm going to do, because I want to know not just whether what African American females did, what African American males did. Did they come out for Stacey Abrams the same way that they came out for what all of the other people of color around Atlanta in those suburban areas, what did they do? Was it a turnout problem, or was it just overall the Warnock coalition disintegrated? And so I'm gonna have to look at those numbers, and I don't know if anyone has looked at them. Veronica, you were shaking your head, so I'm wondering, do you know what I know not?
Yes, the men did not support candidate Abrams as strongly as they did the other candidates.
Black men, I'm talking.
Candidates. So there were some gender differences.
Black men. I'm talking about black men.
Black men.
Why do you suppose that's the case?
Our history. I mean, the African American male, and I'll say culturally from our roots, is very patriarchal.
Yeah.
Got you.
And that Black men or white men were ready for a Black woman as governor of Georgia. We're just not there yet. So I was not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who voted for Warnock and just refused and found every reason in the book. Like you just name a reason. They don't even name it, because some of the stuff they said didn't even make sense. And they just made up reasons as to why they did not give their vote to Stacey Abrams. It's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. But it's really not, because we as women see this all the time. You don't go into a classroom and hear somebody tell a man, I'm gonna call you yo or Mr. when your name should start with doctor. You don't have that. The men don't ever deal with that. I go into a classroom and they know your name, but they wanna call you Miss or Kel. And I'm like, what? Who else are you calling by their first name? When did you even know my first name? Did you go and search for it? Because that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So it's just something, there's just this thing that we experience as women that men will never experience and don't even know anything about. And so when they hear it, it's almost like, that she's just making that up. But it's unbelievable, the stuff women deal with. It's unbelievable. And
I echo your sentiments. I echo the sentiments, and I tell students when they want to call me by my first name, what I respond with, Kelechi, is my friends call me Christy. This is not the space for us to be on the first name basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, our groups aren't back yet. I'm looking at the participant numbers. Are they back? Yeah.
It doesn't
I mean,
look
not our
like
groups.
it.
Not the
It's
groups.
still at about a minute.
Our
It's the count. It's
judges.
the counters.
It's
I mean,
15
Okay,
the
seconds.
judges.
You need
Our
that
judges are back.
Snickers. You need that
The
Snickers.
judges are
Tabulated.
back.
It's been tabulated and forwarded to Dr. Liddell.
Okay, Dr. Liddell, you have the floor.
Okay, all right. Let's give a big round of applause for both and all of the teams for their participation. They did an outstanding job, all of the groups, everyone, every single one. You are all winners. But team 2 it was very close. Team 2 had 340. Team 3 had 351. Let's hear a drum roll. Congratulations. I would like now for all of the teams to, I don't think all of them had opportunity to speak, but if they would just, we could give them just 30 seconds for everyone to just say their names and their team. Let's start with team 2.
My name is Quintavis Styles. I was a part of team 2. I go to Albany State. Go Rams.
Hello, I'm Emily Lowry, team 2, Jackson State University.
I'm Sufyan Tahir. I'm from UT Dallas. Congratulations to team 3.
Our next team, team 3.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen McKnight Hill. I am from Southern University Agricultural and Mechanical College in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm here because of Dr. Liz.
Next.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Williams. I'm here from North Carolina Central University, and I would like to give respects to Dr. Nicole Diggs. She's the professor that brought me here.
Okay, do we have one more?
Oh, one more. That's me. Hi, my name is Tony Owen. I'm from Texas Southern University, Houston, Texas. Dr. Adams invited me to this conference. Thank you.
I'm Melissa Roosevelt, Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. I'm also from the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond, Oklahoma. And thank you to Dr. Overman for having me and to my team members. They're great.
Team 1.
Hi, I'm Angela Jordan. I attend Jackson State University, giving all kudos to Dr. Billingsley, our department chair. Thank you for this opportunity.
Next.
Johnson. I go by TJ. I'm from University of Nebraska, Omaha, and second year participating thanks to Dr. Charles Minifield.
Hi, I'm John Aquida from Ohio University. Actually invited by Dr. James Agbojake. It's nice being here. Thank you.
Let's give all of them a big round of applause.
I am so impressed, let me say, about how there was no repeat. I think everyone came from a different school. That's so awesome. I'm just so impressed. Wow. Great job.
I would like to say thank you to all of the supporters of the debate. This is the 15th year, and some of these individuals have been with me all the way. There's one person that is absent today, Nicole Campbell Lewis passed away in November. She was one of the first persons that worked with me with the debate when I started in Hampton, Bermuda, 15 years ago. So I'd like to just mention her name. And I just thank all of you. And we know that technology has its greatness and there are some weaknesses. So we senior citizens, we have to get beefed up, drummed up, but I am known as a pusher and a lifter. And we will continue to push and lift this public policy debate. And kudos goes to Dr. Gloria Billingsley. She was instrumental with the group that named COMPA's debate after me. It's named L. Francis P. Liddell Student Policy Debate. I started it out as just student policy debates. Then Susan Gooden also joined in with Bill, and they named the ASPA debate after me. Paul Parsner, who's no longer with us, he was in Hampton, Bermuda when it started. And he asked if I would do the debate for ASPA as well. Thank you, Toastmaster. Toastmaster. Thank you, COMPA President, for your support as we continue to make COMPA all that it can be. Thank you. You will receive your trophies. See, I'm on video. See, I want to show you the trophy that you will receive. And you will receive a certificate of participation. My video does not work very well, so this is why most of the time I've had it off, but it does work every now and then. But this is the trophy. Thank you so much. And I now return control to the president